Okay, so you've probably watched countless videos and reviews on the new Panasonic GH6. You've gone into the depths of what it can do, the feature set. You've looked at image quality and just about everything possible with that camera, because some reviewers have done such an amazing job with those. Sadly, I haven't had my hands on one yet. So what I'm going to do in this video is do something slightly different, and I'm going to compare it to two Panasonic cameras that I own, because they're going to be kind of competitors as to how you spend your hard-earned money. And they're also predecessors to that camera. So I'm just going to do a quick comparison to see how the GH6 compares to the Panasonic GH5 and the Panasonic S1H. So first of all, let's just quickly run through each camera just to let you know kind of what it's got. If you're just starting out in photography or filmmaking, videography, then you'll be keen to know what each of these cameras can do and whether they're a good purchase for you or not. But we'll go through each one individually in a second. But first of all, the Panasonic GH5, I'll let you know, is 5 years old, but it's still as relevant today as it was back then in 2017. It's a powerhouse of a camera. It's my go-to camera when I do filming like this. Obviously, I'm showing you at the moment, so I'm filming on the Canon EOS 5D Mark IV. So I just wanted to be able to show you this in comparison with the S1H and also the GH6. So at the moment, I've actually got a Metabone speed booster on here, which is one of the best things made for this camera. So I can use all of my Canon glass. Obviously, I don't get the good power stabilisation as I would with a standard Pani lens. But the fact that you can do that with this camera, most cameras these days, is brilliant. So I use all my Pani glass with this, Canon glass with this. And when I do, the image quality is sublime. So as a little camera that you're maybe getting into videography, I would highly recommend this still 5 years on, but we'll come back to that a bit later. But it's got so much of a feature set. When it first came out, I had the GH4 before this. When the GH5 came out, all of the features it had with internal recording at 10-bit 422 was absolutely amazing. So this is still good now. It's still relevant and pertinent now. Still a great little camera. The GH6 kills it dead. I know that's kind of contradictory, but the GH6 5 years later has got so much more going for it. Obviously, it's had so much refinement and so much more features added to it that you may find necessary for your work, or you may find that this has got enough for you right now. So this is why I'm doing this. But the GH6, I was really impressed. Let's just quickly cover the elephant in the room, the autofocus. The autofocus on this, I actually did a workaround video where you could get it to work reasonably well by making loads of tweaks and adjustments in the camera. It's DFD focus, so it works on contrast-based focusing. Everyone was hoping that they would go over to a phase detect, kind of like Canon doing it, and Sony and people like that. Sadly, they didn't. It's still on the DFD mode, so that was one downside. But from everything I've seen, it's a lot quicker than the GH5, GH5 II and GH5S. So it's still an improvement, but if you're looking for a vlogging camera, we'll come back to this later. I wouldn't necessarily use it for that. So that's the elephant in the room with the GH6, is that it's still got that contrast-based focusing, which is not great, but we'll come to the figures a bit later. The Panasonic S1H, I bought this last year because I got fed up with waiting for the GH6. And I've got to say, I love it. It's just a stunning camera, but you can see the difference in size. That's one of the biggest deciding factors for a lot of you when you're deciding to what sort of camera to buy. It's an amazing camera, and the reason I've included this is A, because I've got one, but secondly, the GH6 is almost like a mini Panasonic S1H. It's better in some respects than the S1H. The GH6 is better than this, and in other respects, this still beats the GH6. So I'm going to run through what each thing has side by side, and you can then decide which you think, based on the cost, the features, and what you're going to use it for, the weight and all that kind of stuff, as to whether it's something you would buy the GH6 over either of these two cameras. So I'm going to quickly run through. I'm going to keep it as short as possible. So first of all, I will just say there's only one area where I've given this the green over the other two, where it's better than the other two, and that's just simply the weight. So it's a very small camera, easy to handhold. It's a quick grab and go camera. So the only way this beat the other two really was the weight and also the price. That's a big deciding factor. So first of all, megapixels. All the Panasonic mirrorless cameras to date have been around 20 megapixels. So this was 20 megapixels. GH4 was, the predecessors to the GH5 were. But the GH6 is now 25.2 megapixels, which is a big deal, especially when you factor in the fact they've got you can do a supersized photo where I think it goes up to, I can't remember, it's 50 or 60 or 70. I can't remember, I have to double check, but it will create huge photos, and using that sensor makes it even better. The S1H is slightly smaller at 24.2, but it's good enough for me. And I will say now, that the stills from a full frame camera are better for me than the stills from a Micro Four Thirds. So even though the GH6 has a slightly higher megapixel count, I still prefer the full frame sensor on this for the bokeh and things like that, and the image quality, especially in low light. Vlog, this has got Vlog L, so it's a lighter version. Both the GH6 and the S1H have both got Vlog Full, so that's brilliant. Great for the GH6. Maximum resolution of this goes up to 4K 60. The GH6 goes up to 5.7K 60. That's massive, and it's 10-bit internal as well. So that's amazing, and I think that beats this hands down. When it comes to this camera, the S1H, this goes up to 6K 24, so it's cut at 24 frames a second. So it depends on what you want, whether you want the 6K quality or if you want 5.7K with a slightly faster 5.7. This also does 1080 up to 180 frames a second when you're using the VFR, variable frame rates. The GH6 does up to 300 frames per second when using VFR, and 240 frames a second if you want to include sound on just the standard kind of rate. And this will also do up to 180 frames a second in 1080 and 60 frames a second in 4K. So the only wish I would want on this is 4K 120 and maybe 5K, 5.7, 5.9K at 60 frames a second. So the S1H, sorry, the GH6 wins hands down for the sheer amount of actual frame rates and deviations you've got with that. So it's absolutely brilliant, great update. Bit rates, both of these do 400 megabits per second, 422 10-bit internal. So that's already fantastic. If you've shot with these at those rates, you'll see that you get some stunning footage. The biggest thing about the Panasonic GH6 is that it does 1.9 gigabits per second ProRes internal, which is massive, absolutely fantastic. I can actually, I'm using a Atomos recorder at the moment, so I can actually I can film ProRes with both of these cameras, but I do need an external recorder. So the GH6, smaller package, ProRes internal, fantastic, massive thumbs up for that. All of the three cameras have got headphone jacks, and they've all got 3.5mm mic jacks. So Panasonic, it's one of the reasons I switched to Panasonic, because way back then in 2016, I think when I got the GH4, it had all of those features, so it's great for filmmaking and video. They've all got full HDMI out, which is fantastic. That's not Netflix approved. This is Netflix approved. So if you wanted to shoot stock photography to be used on Netflix programs, it's a killer camera for that. The GH6 hasn't been approved as yet, but I can't see why it wouldn't be. With the feature set it's got and the standard of quality, I can't see why it won't be accepted. So that's, at the moment this wins, but that may well change with the GH6. Stabilisation, GH5 has got 5 stops, the S1H has got 6 stops, and the GH6 has got 7.5 stops. There's so many benefits to having that. Again, you've just got one camera, throw it in your bag, you've got stabilizers, you've got ProRes internal, just fantastic. Record times with each of these, the GH5 will go unlimited, especially as long as you've got maybe to an external recorder where you can hot swap stuff. You can hot swap the SD cards in here anyway. The only thing it hasn't got is a fan. Now, so that's unlimited. The S1H and the GH6 have both got internal fans. That's the best thing about the GH6. It's got a fan similar to the S1H. So, and it's very quiet. I can never hear it on this. So it's absolutely brilliant. To have that on the GH6 as well on a small format camera with all of those features, it's just a powerhouse. It's brilliant. Some of the big problems with Canon cameras initially when they were doing high resolution 6K, 8K video was that they would overheat quite quickly. So having a Panasonic GH6 with a fan, with all of the internal goodness, being able to record indefinitely as long as you've got the power and the card size to accommodate, it's amazing. It's an amazing camera. Dual cards, so you've got dual SD, and because the GH6 shoots in ProRes, you're going to need a CF Express card. So you've got one CF Express card and one SD card slot. People sort of complain about that sometimes, saying why don't they just do 2 CF Express cards? Kind of agree with that, but to have an SD cards, most of us got loads of SD cards, so it's not such a biggie, but the CF Express cards are a little bit more expensive, maybe paying around £300 to £400 for a decent card. Focus on this I've actually worked out to be pretty good. There are workarounds. The thing with Panasonic is they've got so many different focus features in there, it's hard to try and find the exact one that you need. Whether you're doing static shot like this or if you're doing sports and things, then you know it's a difficult choice. DFD is okay, but it's not perfect. If you're shooting stuff like me, if you're doing a bit of vlogging, going out and about, just doing mostly static stuff, or things like this where you're doing interviews to camera, or you're doing product reviews or whatever, where there's no fast movement, all three cameras, Panasonic, are fantastic, super sharp, and the autofocus works okay, but I tend to shoot manual all of the time. If you're a vlogger or if you're shooting sports or nature, I don't think Panasonic's going to be for you because the focusing just isn't on point. Canon, Nikon, Sony, Olympus, they have all now got such fantastic focusing features that you're not going to be able to beat it with the Panasonic. So if you do those kind of things with photography and filmmaking, then actually photography with the Panasonic, this S1H is absolutely fantastic. It'll probably be the same with the GH6, but if you're a filmmaker looking for a good autofocus camera, I would say Panasonic isn't for you. So next we've got the rear LCD screen. This wins with a 3.2 inch 2.33 million pixel screen, and the GH6 has got 3 inch 1.8 million. This has got 3.2 inch 1.6, so it doesn't really matter because it's a screen and you can use external screens anyway. The ISO, this is where the Panasonic S1H wins. It's got pure dual native ISO, going from 640 to 4000, and at 4000 ISO this is still really clean, great at low light. It's the big sensor, full frame sensor with that the dual native ISO is fantastic. This has just got normal ISO, and it's not great in low light. I will say that you need good light with this camera, the GH5. If you're going to do loads of dark shooting, then it's not a camera for you. The GH6, from what I've seen, has much better low light than this, and it's really clean and crisp, but they've got a strange kind of boosted ISO. So you've got 250 ISO and 2000. So if you want to shoot high ISO, sorry, if you want to shoot vlog in the daytime with the GH6, you're pretty much stuck at 2000 ISO, which can be a real pain because you're going to need a really strong ND filter to get the frame rates you want. So yeah, it's good, but I think it's going to change with some, they may do some firmware upgrades later on where they'll change that. But for now, on the ISO, with the dual native ISO with this, that's fantastic. Hopefully the GH6 will catch up with the firmware upgrade. But even saying that, it's still very good. Shutter life, GH5 200,000, it's worked out to be. GH6 is the same at 200,000. On this, it's 400,000 on the S1H. The burst on mechanical shutter, now this is quite impressive. This sadly only does 9 frames per second, so it's not the best nature photographer or sports camera. The burst on this does 12 frames a second with a mechanical shutter, but on the GH6, 14 frames per second, which is fantastic. When we switch to electronic shutter, this stays at 9 frames per second, so really not great. That's why I bought it mostly for a video and standard stills camera. I didn't buy it for sports or anything like that. The electronic burst on this is 12 frames per second, the same as its mechanical. But on the GH6, the electronic shutter, the burst rate is 75 frames per second, which is amazing. But when I've looked at other reviews, you get about maybe 2.5 to 3 seconds before the buffer gets full. So you have to really kind of know what you're doing with the focusing. You with the burst rates, you need to be on point with what you're shooting and make sure you get that within 2 to 3 seconds. But it's still a great rate to have. Tally lamp when you're filming, so I can see this is filming using the monitor, and also I've got it on my phone, but the GH5 doesn't have a tally lamp. So if you're actually doing filming of yourself like to camera like this, you would either have to flip the screen out and look at it that way so you can see that it's actually recording, or you'd have to use a phone or a tablet to actually see that it's recording. The GH6 and the S1H both have a tally lamp on the front and back, so you can see from both angles whether it's recording or not. Because sometimes, especially if you've got the shutter button pushed as a half press to record, sometimes you can just touch it and it will stop recording by accident. So tally lamps are fantastic. Battery life, this wins only ever so slightly. It does 400 frames standard with photography and 1150 if you're on power saving mode. This does 350 and 800. This does 410 and 1000. The Panasonic GH6, funnily enough, is actually lower than both of them at 350 and 800. So it's down to the battery. They may improve the battery, I don't know, but again, it's just one of those things. Just buy multiple batteries or get an external battery pack, because with the GH6 you can plug in an external battery pack, and if you use a third-party one, it will charge the battery and power the camera at the same time. I think that with the Panasonic battery pack you can do either or. Okay. Weight, this is what we came to before. So this weighs 645 grams. The GH6 is 739, so not a massive difference, but it's still heavier, and that's because of the fan on the back. And this is a whopping 1,052 grams. So this is a beast. When you've got bigger lenses on it and everything, then obviously this is way more to carry around for weddings and things like that. So the Panasonic GH6, I think, is a good middle ground, and it's a perfect kind of weight for that size of camera with the feature set it's got. Now, before I get to the price, I'll just want to mention about the rear screens. Again, one of the reasons I went with the GH4 over other cameras at the time is because it had a screen that flipped and rotated. So when I'm filming myself, I can have it like that, which worked out perfectly. The only trouble with that was that when I've got cables in, whether it's going to an external monitor or a microphone or HDMI out, things like that, or the USB-C, then when the cables were there, I couldn't twist this, which was a real pain. So when the S1H came out with a fantastic back monitor that could actually flip out as well as doing all the other bits and pieces, that left these free. So the cables never got caught up with it. Fantastic innovation. You don't get much of a better monitor and rear screen than that. So really impressive. And the fact that the GH6 now has exactly the same, that's fantastic. The only difference with the GH6 is on the S1H, you have to slide at the bottom and then lift it out. With the GH6, you can just pull it out. There's no switch. The reason that's better is because when this is on a tripod, that is almost hindered. So it's very difficult to actually open it once it's on a tripod. GH6 doesn't have that problem. It just pulls straight out. So again, they've listened to people, they've listened to the Pani users, and I think they've created an almost perfect camera. So the only downsides for me before I finish, let's go to the price. So this new, the GH5 new, is between 900 and 1,300 pounds, depending on where you go. Second hand, you can get it for 600 to 800 pounds. So if you're just getting into video photography, or you're just getting into this whole space of mirrorless cameras, and you're not sure, you're a bit tentative, you want to dip your toe in the water, if you can get one of these for 600 to 700 pounds, it's a bargain, and you'll have years and years of fun with it. It's still relevant now. It's still going to be relevant in the future. Fantastic little camera. So if you're just starting out, I would recommend getting a GH5. You're still going to love it. Superb camera. The GH6 is £1,999. So you can convert that to whatever country you're in. Obviously, there's no second-hand price at the moment. Now, I'll come back to the price on that in a second. This brand new at the moment you can get for £2,999. When I bought it, the actual price was around £3,400. I was lucky enough to get this for £2,400 on eBay, brand new. Took a bit of a risk, spoke to the seller quite a bit. He convinced me. I bought it, got it for £2,400, brand new. So that's only £400 more than the GH6. So I was chuffed to bits with that. Love this camera to bits. It's absolutely brilliant. But if you're buying it new, it's £2,999. If you want to get it secondhand, I've looked, you can get them for around 1,900 to 2,400. So you can get a secondhand S1H the same price as a brand new GH6. So which would I buy if I didn't have any of these? The GH6, 100%. I love full frame. So if I didn't have this, if the GH6 had come out earlier, I would have bought the GH6 and then maybe gone for a Canon R3 for my full frame video work. And photography. But the fact is I bought this and I've fallen in love with it, so it's fantastic. So I would still buy the GH6 because for me, doing professional work, photography and video, I've got a full frame sensor for photography, got a fantastically high quality full frame video camera, and the GH6 matches this perfectly with everything it does, but it also gives some higher specs as well. You've got the fan, so they can both record continuously. So when I shot a 108-hour Guinness World Record, I had to have cameras running constantly. They were overheating, getting cold, they were getting rained on. It was a pain. So having this with the GH6 for something like that would be fantastic to complement each other, be my perfect setup. So it may well happen. The thing with the price on the GH6 is the way I thought of it was 1,900 or say £2,000 for a camera with so many features and such a lot going for it. I kind of mentally compared it to the latest DJI Mavic 3 and the camera on there, which is a tiny little thing. It shoots ProRes, but it's just a little lump on the front. I mean, it's great, don't get me wrong, the drone is fantastic and the video quality is superb. But when you think that costs £4,300 for ProRes in a tiny little camera with, it's got some good features, but when you compare it to £2,000 for a Panasonic GH6, it's almost worth, I love the Mavic 3, I think it's brilliant, but it's almost worth spending £2,000, if you're doing aerial stuff, £2,000 on a GH6, spend another couple of thousand on a framework that will lift it into the air and use it as a drone, and you have got the ultimate drone camera. Seriously, it'll be fantastic. So that's my recommendation if you're a serious drone pilot, is maybe to get a larger framework for the drone and throw a GH6 on it. Beautiful, because you can pull it straight off the drone, get it onto a stabilizer, do whatever you need to do. So that's pretty much it. I hope this really helps. Hoping to make up your mind which to buy. Like I said, if you're just starting out and you're beginning, then the GH5 is still a fantastic buy. Maybe the GH5 2 or the GH5S. Have a look at those three. Much better price, lower price point to get into the business. Have a look at those, and also get a Metabone speed booster, because you can use external or third-party glass with it. Brilliant camera. GH6 I just think is, if you don't need the superb autofocus that Canon, Nikon and all the others give, but you do have reasonable autofocus, it's much quicker than this, so it still works. But if you don't need that, then the GH6 I think has got just about everything else. The only other downside is low light compared to a full frame camera. Not quite as good, but it's still good enough. So I think the GH6, if you're looking for a B-roll camera to a full frame video camera or much bigger camera, then I think it's a great camera to have on set to do all sorts of things with, or throw it on a drone. Great for photography, great for video. It's just an all-round beast if you don't need the autofocus. Okay, if you're looking for a bigger camera with a full frame and you're into Panasonic and you may be invested in the glass, the S1H is a stunning camera. The video footage from this is just sublime. It's really good. Tons of features in here. That's reminded me of one other thing the Panasonic GH6 doesn't have, which peed me off a little bit, is that Panasonic have a thing called post focus, and the other one I can't remember, 6K photo. So this has 6K photo, this has 6K photo, the GH6 doesn't. They've removed it for whatever reason. Now what 6K photo does, I'm going to give you a quick scenario. Let's just say you're hovering, you've got your camera with long lens over a hummingbird nest or over a hummingbird flower you know it's going to go to, or something that's going to attract it. You can have the camera filming that, and obviously to try and get it as it comes out of the nest, you've got to try and be really quick. There's no way you can tell when it's coming out. With post focus, or sorry, with 6K photo, you can actually have the camera recording continuously into a buffer for a second. So as soon as the bird comes out of the nest, you hit that within a second, and you've got pre-recorded a second's worth of photos or footage. Photos, 18 megapixels. So you'll never miss the shot. As long as you hit it quickly, as soon as something's happened, you've got a second burst and a second afterwards, and you've got that whole range of up to 30 photos. So you'll get 30 photos to choose from. You can scrub through them, save the one you want to 18 megapixels. Fantastic feature. The same with this. So I've always thought that's a fantastic feature. I can't understand why they've taken it off the GH6, but it's not there. That's my only other gripe. So that's pretty much it. If you're looking at any of these sort of cameras in the Panny range, then I hope this has helped you kind of make a decision. More often than not, because these all film amazing 4K video, 10-bit internal, then that may be enough for you, in which case it'll come down to price and what sort of low light stuff you need. Other than that, it's basically a case of checking them out yourself, having a look, look at more reviews online. But I just thought this might help to compare the three standards that you've got to make a decision to see what you want to buy. Good luck with it, but I think the GH6 is an absolute winner, so I may be getting one myself, at which point I'll do a full review. Okay, thanks for watching. If you liked it, please like, subscribe, share, do whatever you need to do, and we'll see you on the next video.